All right, we're live. It says we were live for 1 minute. I'm not sure why it says that. But we were just like, I hope nobody heard what we were saying.
We weren't saying anything bad.
That's true. That's true. Good evening, everybody. We are joined this evening with none other than Justin Bamforth. He's very different than any guest that we've had on, which we were very, very happy that he could give us some time this evening. Justin, for those who do not know you, can you please introduce you and, just kind of give a little bit of background, how you got into everything, and I'll be watching comments, questions, and all that good fun stuff.
Yeah, sure. So as anyone in this field can tell you, and I always say this, we don't choose the paranormal, it chooses us for whatever reason. Same thing with my life story. It began at an early age, like so many of you who are watching today. I had a haunted experience growing up. And that kind of like got my interest in this, looking for answers. But things didn't really begin to take off until I started this group called Normal Paranormal. And today it has kind of like blossomed into this huge online, I don't know what you would call it, like a blog, a discussion group, just a place for people to come together and talk about strange things, to share their stories with me. And after a few years, I began receiving enough reports and accounts that I compiled it into a book that I call The Spectrum, Glimpses of the Paranormal and Encounters with the Strange. It looks at all this high strangeness from, the ghosts, UFOs, cryptozoology, the enigmatic men in black, and all sorts of psychical phenomenon. And I've learned that there's a lot of commonalities and a lot of patterns that they tend to share with one another. That's a little nutshell.
So it's not just because obviously I'm doing like I promoted it as like UFOs and but then today it says anything that is of unexplained, unworldly phenomena, and I feel like before when we had you on, if I remember correctly, you actually will get stories from other people that have gone through things, and you kind of like investigate that a little bit with the person, and maybe put it in you write about it, or you investigate that, you research it. What are some of the kinds of things that people come to you with that you would actually take time out to say, okay, this is something I need to look into?
Yeah, probably the stuff that nobody else wants to touch or deal with. That's usually what people come to me with, the stuff that you can't easily categorize or fit into a neatly organized box. In the paranormal, we tend to kind of like explain it as best as we can, right? We like to define it so that we can kind of better understand maybe how it operates or certain rules, if you will. But then there's this little subsection of cases that don't appear to have any rules. They don't appear to have any rhyme or reason behind them. I'm interested in those, the things that people don't know why it's happening, but they don't know who to call, for example, with like the Men in Black phenomenon, it's a lot of people tend to think that it originates with the UFO enigma, but it's a lot larger than that. It tends to be these strange encounters with strange people, if you will. And who do you go to with that? It's a lot of these experiences tend to touch on a little of everything, and that's kind of where I've kind of found my niche, if you will. It's a weird world, and there's a lot of strange encounters out there, but I love hearing about all these things and talking with people, because you learn a lot just being quiet and just listening, so it's really interesting, and also how the experiences transform and shape the person's life going forward. That is what I found to be the most profound aspect altogether.
Yeah. So what would you say is like, one of the biggest, or maybe something that has stuck with you, a case that has stuck with you that I mean, you do. You keep in touch with everybody, right? You know, all the people that you talk to, and I mean, is it kind of like, you know, what we do? We go out to a house where they think it's haunted, and we're going out there. We investigate. We kind of help them. We give them tools and stuff like that. I mean, is more of your stuff more towards the, you know, UFO-ish, you know, stuff like that, or is it both? Or
Yeah, you know, it's funny because you know, a lot of paranormal investigators tend to throw the UFO cases my way, and then a lot of UFO investigators tend to throw the paranormal cases my way. If they just began to talk to each other, they'd realize that there's a lot of overlap between all of the cases. You know, one of the reasons why I never became a formal MUFON investigator is because I didn't agree with their methodology in the sense that you're out there to look at one report and you're not supposed to get involved with the person's life or their other, you know, experiences. And I kind of have a hard time with that, you know, because they're a person will only share with you usually what you want to hear as an investigator. If you go out looking for a particular thing, that's all you're going to find. But if you start to ask different questions and you start to, you know, again, gain their trust in that sense, people will begin to open up to you and share with you their experiences. You know, a lot of times when I call somebody or I email somebody or whatever, interact with someone, they'll only tell me a small glimpse into what they're experiencing. It's not until like maybe days, weeks later that they'll say, oh yeah, and you know, there's another thing I forgot to mention. Or, oh, I didn't think this related at the time, but, you know, I'll just share it with you for what it's worth now. And what they don't know is that so many people are experiencing the same thing. And, you know, again, I think as investigators, we should, you know, this is going to be, you know, a radical idea, but if we tend to focus less on the investigation as far as like the experience, even though that's very important, but again, we consult with the person and we begin to really, you know, get on their level, understand what it is that they're going through, what it is that they're, you know, what could have brought it in, what could have started it, maybe even looking at their whole family history and seeing that, oh, you know what, this is actually run throughout their family line. Like, why is that? You know, we'll begin to see a lot more clues, I think, that'll help us along the way, instead of just being so preoccupied with the event, the experience. But, you know, getting back to your question, I think you had asked me about a case that stuck out, right? Mm-hmm. So a great example of this, that kind of this crossover, if you will, is the case of Shane Sovar, who I talk about in my book. You know, this is a guy who had a UFO experience, then some haunting activity, then a Men in Black encounter, which was even caught on camera. You know, I had the privilege of interviewing him, and I established a great relationship with him, and he shared with me more over the years that has taken place beyond that. But what people don't know is, you know, people tend to focus on that video footage of these two mysterious men in black that show up in the hotel lobby of the place that he worked. You know, I encourage your viewers to go on YouTube and just type in like Men in Black caught on camera or Men in Black in Canada, and you'll see this footage.
Well, that's amazing footage too.
Yeah, and you know, what is that?
Wow.
I don't know if this is truly Men in Black. I wasn't there, right? I can't prove it, but I can't disprove it. However, there's a lot of witnesses who interacted with these guys, and these guys were downright creepy. But the thing with that case, though, that really fascinates me is that was the end of his experiences, as far as we know, at that point in 2009. Rewind a little bit to 2008, and he had 2 triangle sightings in the sky. Mm-hmm. And then he had a strange encounter with some weird gentleman that shows up on his property. He interacts with this gentleman, and then the gentleman, you know, says some weird things to him, and then he says, I'll see you a year later, or I'll see you a year from now, whatever. And then he's gone. Shane is like, all right, this is a weird guy. He's talking with his neighbors at the time, and he finds out that his description of this gentleman was a guy who had died like 15 years prior.
Oh, wow.
After that encounter, Shane and his family had poltergeist-like activity erupting in his house. It wasn't until many months later that the Men in Black thing happens. So what was that? You know, how do you even begin to tackle that? How do you even begin to address that? You know, the original group that looked at the UFO stuff centered on the UFO stuff. They centered on the Triangle case. They centered on the Men in Black experience. When I came along, I really honed in on the whole gamut of experiences. You know,
Right.
What is it that this gentleman experienced? And then I come to find out that there's more in his family history. You know, there were other events that took place prior to this. You know, when he was a child, there were things that happened with his kids. There's things that happened with his community, his neighborhood. There's a lot more to this. It's not quite so, you know, clear cut like a black and white issue. You know, that's why a lot of times people ask me, well, do you believe in ghosts? Have you seen a ghost? And I say, well, I don't know what a ghost is, so how can I believe in it? This stuff is just amazing. So
do you believe in Men in Black?
well, I believe that the witnesses are certainly encountering something. Whether it's the stereotypical Men in Black, you know, with the black sunglasses, the black hat, the suits, the whole, you know, dressed to the nines in black. Some of the cases are like that, sure. But other cases are not like that. They're very subtle. But they exhibit some of the common mannerisms found in these other MIB reports. So again, if we're looking for quote unquote Men in Black, that's what that's what witnesses are going to look at in their own history. Did I have an encounter with a stereotypical Men in Black? They're going to probably say no, but they probably had other experiences with strange individuals that exhibit tendencies like MIB. Again, that's why I've started rephrasing some of my questions. You know, have you had, you know, any encounters with unusual individuals that stood out to you as bizarre at the time? Or have you had, you know, strange phone calls or, you know, whatnot? So again, we have to ask the right questions, but we have to frame it in such a way that it's vague enough that it's not specifically saying, this is what I'm looking for, even though that may be what it is that we are looking for.
On the Facebook that you said that the picture with the Men in Black, do you also have the phone interview, the phone call on there too, that the people could listen to?
Oh yeah, sure. The Gary Sudbrink case. That's a really fascinating case as well. Yeah, that's on normalparanormal.org. It's at the top. There's a slider at the page. I have it up there. I think I call it Creepy Calls from a Strange Entity. People can listen to these phone calls for themselves. You know, a little backstory. This gentleman named Gary Sudbrink, he was an Air Force captain, right? Assigned to, I think it was pharmacy work in Texas. And this was in 1993. And he made a surprise trip, right, to visit his friends and family in Long Island. Now, he doesn't tell anybody, not even, you know, nobody knew about this. So at the airport, he has some strange encounters with some strange men. Then when he gets to his destination, he meets up with his father, and they go discuss a UFO case that his father and uncle had, you know, unrelated to this, you know, years prior, or maybe it was that same year. I can't remember. They talk with this one UFO investigator, then they come home, and Gary makes a phone call to his longtime friend, Mike. Here's where it gets weird. When he's calling Mike, he's on the phone with him, and Mike says to Gary, "Hey man, you already called me." What? You know, Gary's like, no, I didn't. I just came in. Like, that's impossible. Here he is having an argument with his friend over whether or not he called him, and Mike is sure as anything that, hey Gary, you did call me, and you told me what airport you came in, which was actually incorrect. I think Gary had come in actually through JFK Airport, but this impersonator caller came in through, or said he came in through LaGuardia. This impersonator, Gary, also sounded as if he had a stuffy nose, which is why Mike did not want to hang out with him. Anyways, they're on the phone talking about this, and then another call comes in, because the call waiting. So Gary, talks, answers, picks up the other line, and there's where this strange voice starts to come on the line. And this strange voice is really bizarre. It sounds very robotic. It sounds very, very creepy, quite frankly. And this caller is like, he's talking about all sorts of weird stuff. He's saying like, you're being impersonated by the other voice. Keep your eyes to the skies. All of this strange stuff, and it's not making any sense. Fortunately for us, Gary and his family are no strangers to high strangeness. So Gary hit record on the answering machine and recorded this series of phone calls. There were 3 on the first night, and then there was 1 on the next night. Bizarre stuff. And your viewers can go up to my website, normalparanormal.org, and listen to these calls for themselves.
Oh, I said .com. Crap, let me fix it.
Yeah, sorry.
I still remember when I saw your lecture, and I could just still remember the robotic voice. It still just, it was so creepy. It was so bizarre. I love to hear it over and over again, because it was just like.
Yeah, and I remember that, Sabrina. I don't think you stuck around that night. You actually took off quite fast after that. But I don't blame you. It's very disturbing stuff. But in the moment when this is happening to Gary and his family, his dad and mom are also listening to these calls as well. Gary's getting frustrated by this. He's thinking it's his brother, who, strangely enough, had seen a doppelganger Gary years prior. So was there a connection? I mean, it didn't seem related in the moment, but that's why he keeps saying, hey, I think his name was Steven. He's like, Steven, if this is you, I'm gonna kick your ass.
Yeah.
But again, his family has had these experiences. So thankfully he pressed record and he documented this. But I've heard of other accounts of people receiving calls from these MIB types. But this is the first time, to my knowledge, that there's an actual recording. Now, is this MIB in nature? Is this conclusively, definitively, 100% MIB? No. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's something. And we have to consider this when looking at this strange stuff. The other thing that I find profound about these phone calls is, again, the delivery, the tone of this voice. It's consistent with people's face-to-face encounters with similar beings. As the night progressed, that first night, it almost sounded like the voice was running low on energy. It got quieter. It got a lot less audible. You can't hear it as well in the third call compared to the first call. But come the next night, it's back up to full strength again, if you will. Very bizarre stuff. It's very similar to other reports. So, and I know if there's one example of this, there's got to be others. So that's what I'm after. I'm after these strange experiences. But again, who do you go to with this? It's bizarre.
So Dustin had a question. Dustin, hi, Dustin. He said, how do you go about establishing credibility in your witnesses? Do you conduct any kind of background investigation on them, or do you just take them for their word?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, Dustin. So as you know, as investigators, there are certain red flags that we've been trained to look for, right? Certain BS flags. Also certain flags that involve mental illness. If somebody's delusional, there'll be certain telltale signs. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I don't claim to be. But when you've spoken with a lot of people over the years, you begin to pick up on certain cues, obvious ones and not obvious ones. So that's my first step. it also helps if there's other people who can back up their story, of course. You know, the more witnesses to an event that you have, the better the credibility factor. Also the background of the individual too. Law enforcement, military, you know, science backgrounds. These are trained observers. They know how to keep an eye for the details of the experience. That doesn't mean that they're perfect. Memory is very flawed, so we also have to take that into consideration. That's why I encourage people to write down what they experience as soon as they experience it. You know, start a log, write all the details that you can possibly think of, even if you don't think that it relates. And things beyond the experience itself, such as your mental state, your emotional state, the time of day, you know, what the weather was like. There could be a pattern in there. There could be a clue. But as far as like, you know, gauging whether somebody's, you know, pulling, you know, trying to run a fast one by you, yeah, you know, you come across those cases a lot. You know, there are hoax cases out there. There are people who have nothing better to do than waste people's time. I've experienced that too. But, you know, there's never going to be a 100% foolproof way to determine if somebody is telling the truth or not. But I always like to put it like this. I'm there to listen to their story, to listen to their experience. I wasn't there to prove it. I wasn't there to disprove it either. If it calls for an investigation and the activity is still happening, well, that's a great chance to kind of be able to further document these events, right? And get this evidence caught on some sort of, camera or audio or whatnot. But we're not always that fortunate, as you guys know. Sometimes this stuff is very elusive, and sometimes it'll happen just once and then it's gone, or seemingly gone, but then it'll come back again several years later. What I've learned is that the phenomenon is, it doesn't want to play on our terms. It wants to play on its terms, and it seems to be in control a lot more than we may give it credit for, or that we may want to admit. That's a disturbing concept.
I'd say.
So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, well, it does answer that question, but then now I have like, my mind's like going boom, 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 boom. I have like so many more questions. So like, all right, so like the phone calls, like, I'm sorry, I don't recall when, did you say it was like when the phone calls were recorded? I don't know how long ago that was, or, you know, but, you know, was it like, oh, did they trace the calls to see if they were being like harassed by someone, you know, or was it just, you know, like you just kind of, I mean, there's a difference between, like when we do EVPs, you can tell the difference between a human voice and if you pick up a spirit voice. Like there's a difference. There's, you know, the difference in the frequencies. There's you can tell the difference. So when you're listening to it, which now I'm gonna have to go listen to it, is that like kind of like the same thing? Like you know, you hear it and you're just like, okay, now I know this isn't, you know, human.
Yeah, well, look, to be quite honest, it sounds like somebody using a voice changer.
Okay.
It also sounds like a recording, because it seems to be playing this itself over and over again. It seems to follow a certain bunch of lines, and then it repeats itself with the same bunch of lines again. However, and that's what I thought it was at first. But then when you actually begin to really listen carefully to these voices, there's slight deviations in that. There's slight changes to the tone. There's slight changes to the delivery. It doesn't quite appear to be a recording, yet in some cases it does. Again, this is what makes it so puzzling. But it's different from EVP in the fact that this was occurring in real time. This was clearly audible. Everybody was listening to this. It was the same type of voice too. Now, as far as like, did they trace the call? To my knowledge, since this was in 1993, they did not trace the call. They did not have caller ID, again, to my knowledge. But there's, there are other calls like this, that I've heard about. There was another writer named Marie D. Jones, and Marie D. Jones is a prolific author. She's written a lot of books on this topic and other topics. Back in, I want to say either the late 80s or early 90s, she had started an alien abduction group in San Diego, California. And when she was starting this group with another woman who she calls Anna, not her real name, but they both Anna and Marie began to receive calls to their residents as well. Again, a similar type of voice. Unfortunately, they did not record it, but the voice that Marie described to me was, it sounded very similar, and it had the same level of creep factor. But she got calls to her house on more than one occasion. But the caller didn't seem to be interested in her so much as it was interested in her research so much as it was interested in the people in this group, this abduction group. And it seemed to have made like its MO to let her know that it was aware of their activities. And it got really unsettling though when this caller then began to identify things that Marie had done, I think in her 20s, that nobody else knew about except for her.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And then the caller began to identify the exact book that was lying on her bed at the time, what she was reading. Like, that's when it got really creepy. So at that time, it was enough that she disbanded the group, both her and Anna, and they never looked back after that. Anna had also received these strange calls. Anna had also received strange visitations to her actual residence out in her front lawn. These guys would show up, and they would be very robotic and very mechanical in their movements. And her and her husband would watch these guys through their window. Very bizarre stuff. That's another aspect with the MIB experience. The mannerisms that they move, or the way that they move, is very clunky or mechanical or robotic. It's very stiff and stilted. I see this time and again in interviewing with people. They keep explaining the same thing. It's very, very bizarre stuff.
So that you might have maybe answered my question, but so I keep saying on the paranormal side of things, even though you're right, it's all linked, whatever. I mean, anything not normal is paranormal, and anything, unexplained, and, any type of phenomenon like that to me is paranormal. But so if I were to like walk around for like 2 weeks and be like, I want to experience a Men in Black situation. Like, I want to see a Man in Black. I want to see a Man in Black, and I want to like put it out there. I want to say like, yeah, I want to see one sitting on my front lawn, or I want to like see a UFO. Like, eventually, is that going to happen? Because not that I want to be like called creepily all the time. You know what I mean? And have some creepy guy calling me, but like, because we think like, in the spirit world, if you tend to deal with the negative side of cases, or maybe not, you're opening that door, you know what I mean? Yeah. For some whatever to come in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So would you say that a lot of your cases, or the people that you've researched and have they, like, before all this stuff happened, were there things that they were doing that may have opened a quote unquote door, or like, does it seem like those people that are experiencing the same things, are they like similar types of people?
Yeah, excellent question. In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. Going back to the first part of your question, if you wanted to have this experience, could you, right? If you went looking for these guys, would you find them? Maybe, but chances are you probably wouldn't, because I've been looking for this for a long time, and I have yet to have a definitive MIB experience. That being said, I have had strange experiences that have come as a result of this research.
I was going to ask that too. Okay.
Yeah, it's but it's not in the ways that you would think. A lot of times it seems to, well, again, I can only speak from my own personal experience. When I'm looking for these guys, they won't show up for me, but they show up for other people close to me. Perfect example of this would be when I did a lecture back in, October 2000. Yeah, that was October 2018, the one that Sabrina was at. When I was talking about this, right? That was in Bordentown, New Jersey.
Yeah.
So unbeknownst to you, or maybe you are aware of this, I'm not sure. But there were two, that was a whole month full of guests, right? Mm-hmm. So I kicked it off that October, and then it was Bruce Tango, Dave Tango's father, the next week. Yeah. And then it was Rosalind and Michael Lewis the third week. Well, it was at Rosalind and Michael Lewis's lecture that the lecture organizers, Marty and Marcia, they had stepped out of that venue, and they were just on the street corner, and they're just having a smoke break, just doing whatever. And then across the street, there was a pharmacy there in Bordentown. I don't know the name of it, or I can't remember the name of it, but there was a strange man across the street there. And they remarked, "Oh, that guy looks a little odd, right? He seemingly was dressed in this MIB attire, except he was wearing jeans." So they make a remark to each other. They look back, and now he has already crossed the street, and he's right on their street, their side of the street. Now, how he had gone from that pharmacy all the way to where they were standing in such a quick amount of time, nobody knows. They remark to each other about that again. Then they look up, and now this gentleman is all the way down another street. He's hauling ass. So then they remark again. They look. He's now in front of them, and he looks into the venue. He peeks his head in. He peeks his head out, and then they look at each other and they go, "Where's Justin? We got to tell him about this," because at that point they realize this guy looks like an MIB. Mm-hmm. He was, from what I can recall, he was very, I think he was a pale complexion, all black attire, hat, and he's wearing sunglasses, which at night, mind you, which was very bizarre.
I was there too, so I remember it was dark at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was wearing jeans. So what the heck is that? Now, was he there for me? Was he there for Michael and Rosalind? Considering that Michael has had face-to-face encounters with these beings as well. But he doesn't call them MIB or Men in Black. He had another name for him and his group, which involved people like Christopher de Cesare, who had experienced this. They called them the Beastie Boys. That was their little code name for that.
He was on here too. He's watching. I don't know if he's still watching, but he's
he checked in. Rosalind's on too. She said, and yep. she's saying.
So was he there though for Michael? I mean, that's a possibility. If he was there for me, he must not be that smart because he was 2 weeks behind schedule.
Right.
If he was there for Michael, he didn't interact with Michael. So I asked Michael about this, and Michael brought up an interesting point. He thought that, maybe these guys are just meant as like a form of reconnaissance or data acquisition. Like they have to be in the vicinity where someone else is in order to gain access, or like retrieve someone's, I don't know, thoughts, feelings, presence, maybe something more. But again, prior to this, Marty and Marcia really had no clue about the MIB. They had no idea. My lecture was the only real experience that they had with it. So did they inadvertently open up a door of awareness, and somehow this guy came through? What I find interesting is that, according to their account, nobody else seemed like they took note of this guy. It was almost like this guy was just there for them and them alone. So I think that's something we also have to take into consideration with these experiences. Are they tailored to fit that individual and that individual alone? It's like when you're on a case, right? And and you may see an apparition. Let's say Terrence sees an apparition, but Sabrina is looking in the same direction and she sees an orb of light. Anthony doesn't see anything at all. He'll just hear a voice, and then maybe there's another person there, or maybe I'm there and I don't see anything.
Or hear anything. Yeah.
Right, or hear anything. So what is that? And then you get nothing on camera, even though all your cameras and all your audio recorders are pointed at that direction. There's nothing.
Of course.
It's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating, but it's fascinating too. And we have to keep that in mind, that again, whatever it is, and I'm not trying to get all mystical on you, but it seems to be operating on its own rules, its own guidelines. So that is exciting, but it's also very frightening. So that's why I caution people: look, it's good to have the right mindset going in to these cases or doing this research. But again, we don't know what it is that is behind it, so we have to be very cautious.
So has Rosalind, I know Rosalind's watching, so she can answer, but I'm sure maybe have they since that time experienced anything else, or was it just that once that happened and it hasn't happened again?
Well, at the time that, if you're referring to that time in Bordentown, you'll have to ask them. To my knowledge, they didn't share. Well, if something did happen, I'm sure they would have shared it by now. And if they didn't, well, shame on you. But I think that was it as far as that was concerned. But here's the thing: Michael and Rosalind weren't even aware of it. That was for Marty and Marcia. Michael and Rosalind were on the upstairs of that venue where they were doing their lecture. Marty and Marcia were downstairs. They were outside the venue. Again, why did that happen? I don't know. But as far as Michael and his group, Chris and others, they had encountered their experiences back in the right after, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Chris, but right after the C2D1 case, there were things that took place after that involving all these strange sightings of these strange men, but other things too. And, that's his story to tell. But it's very fascinating. Again, was a door inadvertently opened up as a result of prior experiences? Possibly. I'm not sure. Could it have just been that certain people are kind of, give off a beacon, if you will, or certain people are kind of predestined for this? It could. Another way to think about it is if you take somebody with you who really wants to have an experience, chances are they won't have an experience. Mm-hmm. But on the same token, somebody who doesn't want to have an experience will, and then the opposite will be true as well. So it's really hard to tell. It's really hard to gauge when this is going to happen, or to go out looking for these things. The famous or the well-known author and investigators, John Keel and Brad Steiger, they would pursue this Men in Black phenomenon at every corner and every turn that they could get. But they seemed to be just a few seconds behind. They couldn't catch these guys. They would miss them by mere seconds or minutes. These guys are very elusive, guys and gals, if you will. Again, this stuff is so puzzling, but I don't know.
So somebody do you feel that? So do you feel that its MO likes the idea of the fear it puts in people, because it remains so elusive and so creepy, and so do you think so for somebody like you,
right?
Maybe because when you were talking about this, I'm like, well, maybe it showed itself. Maybe it was for you, but maybe it's as equally as why does this guy want some? You know what I mean? Why does he? Because normally people are afraid of,
right.
us.
Well, if it's any comfort, these, again, just speaking about the MIB experience, these beings tend to be very skitterish. So one could argue if you're going after these things, that they are running away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And case in point is Nick Redfern's editor. Her name is Beth Wareham. She's one of two of his editors. Now, Nick Redfern, he writes a lot about this topic, incredible books. I had the privilege of interviewing Beth, and she told me that as she was editing Nick's books on the MIB, she'd experienced this. She'd begin to see these MIB beings all over the place. Now, she lived in New York City at the time in a brownstone, and she would notice these beings showing up on her doorstep, outside of her residence, on the street. She would notice these things in her apartment. But, and at first it was very unsettling. She was very creeped out by it. And then it started happening so frequently that she got fed up with it and frustrated. So she would just yell at these things, get the hell out of here. What are you doing? And these things would just jump up and disappear.
Wow.
So again, what is that? It was kind of empowering, at that moment. And, then when she stopped working on his book, the experiences subsided. Then when she started work on his follow-up book about the women in black would show up.
Wait,
so, yeah.
Wait, what? I never even heard of women in black. I never even heard of women in black.
Well, it's another aspect to this. Again, people don't think to look for this, right? Because the men in black stereotype is all that we're focused on.
Right.
And if that's all we're focused on, we're going to miss all the little things going on too. And some of these things involve women. In fact, Michael has had experience. Michael Lewis has had firsthand experiences dealing with these strange women too. As far as I know, I think there was one experience that he told me about. But again, it goes beyond men in black. These are just strange people that appear very odd and out of sorts. It's almost like, okay, so like what's one of the telltale signs, right? These beings tend to fit, to try or attempt to fit in. They try to appear almost too perfect in the way that they conduct themselves and the way that their surroundings are. So they're trying to almost seem like they're trying too hard to fit in and be human, to be normal. And it's coming across as rather unnormal. Right. And it's standing out. So in some of the reports, these beings will have, they won't even have lips. They'll just have lips that appear painted on. Or they won't even have like eyebrows or eyelashes. They'll have phony wigs that they're wearing. They won't even have a single pore on their body, or on their skin rather. Again, it's almost like these things aren't even human,
right.
or aren't even, I don't know. It's really weird. It's I don't know how to really categorize it, because it's just strange people. So that's what I've started asking now. Hey, have you had any experiences with strange people?
Yeah. I would think that they're more of a watcher. I never got the impression that they were going to hurt anyone or do anything in any harm. It just seemed to be just watchers.
But why?
Right.
So I think maybe it's like some kind of data, like you say, data, like some kind of, they're like watching for some unknown reason. I can't answer that part, but I never ever got the feeling when you hear about it that they harm anybody, and you never heard of them harming anybody. I was kind of unusual that when you had the video of them coming in the building, like that was kind of strange. I mean, usually they're just standing there in their old-fashioned car, and with like you said, the poreless, they had very very pale skin and unusual looking, and just watching.
That could be a disguise. I mean, like the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling. He plays a stunt driver. He's a driver. He drives, and in the scene, he's got something that conceals his real face. Just wearing a mask. I mean, you can easily disguise yourself. But my question to you is, so do you think this is like a shadowy organization, or do you think it's something beyond an organization, like a shadowy organization, or like like a national security administration type agency outside this planet. Like, is
like
it
the FBI outside
Yeah.
in a universal?
Like the UFO FBI? Yeah.
well, yeah,
It
or
kind of
something a little
what-
higher than that, more private,
Like-
more surveillance, more collecting
Well,
information,
That'd be
observation, investigators. Yeah, I guess FBI, but not really investigating crime, but just collecting data
of
and-
us
yes.
in our
Mhm.
what we're doing and
Right.
stuff.
Well, no, that's an excellent question. Again, I wish it was that simple. That's what could explain all of the reports. It could explain some of the reports, sure. There could be, this could be some sort of, I don't want to get all conspiratorial, but like this could be some sort of subsection of government, more than just one, working in the shadows to do this. We do know that, during the Cold War, our government at least was very interested in the contactees and the contactee movement. Not only our government, but the Soviet government as well, because there were a lot of communist ideals coming out of these contactee experiences. Not to mention that there was a technological race going on too. The Soviets wanted to know what we had, and we wanted to know what the Soviets had. So, what better way to do that than to also spread disinformation? We know that a lot of Soviet agents had infiltrated UFO groups at that time. Again, going back to Nick Redfern, he writes a lot about this in some of his works. So it's a very real thing, or it was a very real thing at that point. But here's another thing, Anthony. In 1958, 59, this was when the stereotypical MIB experience as we know it really started to take off, right? In the 50s, it was J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI at that time. We know from memos out there that he was looking into these cases. He even had materials that some of the prolific authors at that time, like Gray Barker, had published on the subject. But Hoover was not so much interested in, the paranormal aspects here. He was interested in why these guys were impersonating FBI agents and what their deal was. Mm. So that's the other aspect of this, going to your point about, wearing the disguise. In a lot of these cases, they will assume the identity of a fictitious organization or a fictitious branch of government in order to, allow the person to talk with them. There were, what was it? The Dr. Herbert Hopkins case in 1970s. This was a doctor who was, he was working with an abductee at the time, and he gets a call from this unknown person who claimed to be working for this New Jersey UFO organization. I think it was New Jersey. Basically, it was a UFO organization that never existed. And Herbert Hopkins talked with this man, and this man really got to him emotionally, really shook him up. So then he destroyed all of his files on this abductee. Now, this was a doctor. I think he was a psychiatrist. He wasn't even looking at the UFO subject. Yet somehow he got wrapped up in this. There's, again, is this an aspect of our government that's trying to kind of like suppress the UFO information? That would be the easy explanation, but I don't think it's that simple. Because in a lot of these cases, there are supernatural implications or paranormal implications that, to my knowledge, we just don't have the capability to do. Human beings just cannot mysteriously vanish, in thin air. They can't, a lot of these cases, there's this psychic connection, this psychic link, with going back to the Canadian case with Shane Sovar and the guys coming in the hotel. Did they physically attack the other employees there? No, they didn't cause any, physical damage to them, but they caused emotional turmoil. Right. Shane was not working that day, and that's when these guys showed up. They interrogated his hotel staff, and they really disturbed that hotel staff. especially the hotel tour desk operator, which was a little old Italian woman who had nothing to do with UFOs. She had no idea who these guys were and had no desire. And yet, when she kept telling them that Shane was not working that day, they kept looking at her as if, nah, we don't believe you. And they kept pressing her for information. And she noticed that their eyes were very hypnotic. And she was very put off by the whole experience, so much so that when she's telling this to Shane the next day, she's practically in tears. So did these guys cause that sort of damage? One could argue. Sure.
You know, what was I going to say now? I had totally had a question for you. And I forget. I hate when I do this. My ADD.
Well, we only have 10 minutes left, so you better think of it.
Well, before I go to my question, I just want everybody that's out there joining me, please go to paranormal.org. There are videos and recorded phone calls that you can listen to and watch of apparent Men in Black type of encounters with people that Justin has on his website, and it's awesome. So go to that website, check it out, and let them know what you think. That was the thing I was going to say. So like us as humans, we say Men in Black, Women in Black, ghost, demon, UFO, Bigfoot, whatever. I feel like we have to have a label, right?
Yep.
We have to label it, right? We have to have a label for something in order for us to be able to understand, research. You have to have this like type of a label for things. So the fact that you're saying like it, because what is it? Well, yeah. What's an EVP? What's a spirit? What's a, what is, Kuba Kadre, whatever you want to call it. Like what's the, what is all that? But we have to have, as humans, and even with religion, there's labels for everything, and I just think that you're right about, saying it, but what we're talking about is Men in Black because, we have to have the label.
Right.
I do want to ask you though, what you think about what's that ranch?
Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah. You probably get asked that all the time, but I'm just curious because it sounds like the guy that had all these experiences, he had the poltergeist, he had the triangles in the sky, he had the Men in Black, it sounds like he's like a walking Skinwalker Ranch guy. You know what I mean? Like everything that's happening to him is happening there.
Yeah, that's Skinwalker Ranch is a really interesting case study because here you have a location that continues to have high strangeness associated with it. There's a new show on history I'm sure some of your viewers are familiar with, which gets into this. They call it The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, right? Even though they never really found out the secret. And I don't think they're ever going to.
Yep.
The thing is with these experiences, it could be that we're not meant to figure it out. We may not crack the puzzle or solve this enigma because this mystery has been with human history forever. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It doesn't seem to be. We're not any closer to the answers now that we were back then. It's just, if anything, this mystery just keeps evolving. It doesn't grow, it just evolves. Mm-hmm. And it could be that this phenomenon or these phenomena take the form of whatever it is that we can better identify with them. Going back to your point, Taryn, like we categorize these things, not to solve it, but so that we can better identify and figure out or basically process it, right? So there was a great point that was brought up by another researcher named MJ Benias, and he brings up this excellent point where it could be that there may not be any definitive form. it could be that, how these things appear to us is there's a paranormal halfway point where kind of like humanity extrapolates on what they expect it to be, and therefore the phenomenon appears or manifests itself in what that expectation is, and then that's what we see. It's like our human cultural constructs that shape the phenomenon and identify it, right?
I agree with you.
It could be that there's no definitive shape whatsoever. I love to kind of like draw from, not to turn this into a Wednesday sermon, if you will, but if you look at like Christianity and the Bible, there's this thing that is referred to as theophany, where it's this visible manifestation of a deity to mankind. So how can you apply that? Like, well, in the Bible, it's like if you believe that, is when God appeared to people, he never appeared in his purest form. Yeah. He always appeared in things that could be physically observed, such as burning bushes or pillars of clouds or fire or storms. I mean, God would take on the form of the various shapes and angels. And then, one could argue he took on the human form in Jesus Christ. So it's like, when we look at how these forces in the paranormal tend to display themselves, there could be a relationship in that sense. So again, if we look beyond the obvious and we kind of approach this from different angles, we may find out that perhaps this phenomenon is not coming from an external source, but it's coming from an internal source. Maybe it's tied to us. Maybe this is just an extension of the human experience, but to us it's unknown. So we label it and we categorize it because we don't know what else to do with it.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. So technically, like, think about it. Like, if Bigfoot exists, because my argument's always like, well, how come there's no bones? How come there's no this or that? You know what I mean? Yeah. But if Bigfoot is actually this energy that can manifest itself to fit into its environment, but not 100% be, so like maybe it wants to be a bear, but and it thinks it looks like a bear, but it's not. Just like the Men in Black think they look like a normal person, but they're not,
Gotcha.
So that's yeah. I mean,
yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, that is how we need to approach this phenomenon. Like, if we really want to rethink it or take this going to the new wave, if you will, of research and investigation, we have to get outside of these stereotypes of these things that we think we know. When it comes to, let's tackle ghosts, for example. Yes, some of the cases may be spirits of deceased individuals, but there could be other cases to the contrary. There could be spirits of living individuals. Take, crisis apparitions, for example. That when somebody's going through something very stressful, and then their ghost shows up to people very close to them, but they're not dead.
Right.
What is that? Or, for example, when you think you saw someone, but there's nobody there, but it resembles somebody that you physically know, that you have a connection with, a doppelganger, if you will. How is that? How is that possible? Now, there are those reports that are really rare, and I'm waiting to hear more about that phenomenon.
One last question before we go.
Sure.
So, if you had the chance to sit down with the Men in Black guy, what would be the one question that you would want to know or ask? I mean, I know I'm saying one because we don't have that much time. I'm sure there's probably a million things that you would ask, but if there was something, if you had the chance, like, what's something that you would?
Well, I've been accused of being Men in Black as well. So
really,
I've also been accused of being the New Jersey Devil. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that would be me. No, I'm kidding.
That goes out to Michael's brother, Alan. No, if I had to ask one question, I'd probably ask him, hey, you want to get a drink?
That's great.
Then I can have the conversation,
Yeah.
This stuff is so weird. And look, I don't claim to have the answers. I don't think I'll ever have the answers, but I certainly have a lot of the stories and I have a lot of the reports, and I'll just keep putting them out there in the hopes and hopefully that it encourages people to come forward with their stories, knowing that they're not alone in this, that no matter how crazy their experiences are, look, don't worry about that. Just get the story out there. You may find out that what you're experiencing is similar to what 1,000 other people are experiencing. Again, I'm not there to decide one way or the other. I just put it out there, let you decide.
Yeah. Somebody, there's two things. One person, Juan Barona said, don't leave Justin. You have one more hour. We could probably talk to Justin for 5 hours. Like it's just, the conversation could just keep going and going and going.
We need episode 2s.
We need episode 2 because I have several more questions.
We have so many questions.
So many questions.
I'll tell you what, in the meantime, your viewers.
Yes.
Oh,
there's his book. Woo.
Yeah, if you're interested, if you want to be put to sleep at night and pick it up, I'm sure it'll bore you.
Yeah, and so you have his book, the Spectrum, and then we have paranormal.org.
Yep, you got it.
He's got
because .com was too expensive. That's like $4,000. So forget it.
Look, .org sounds a little official though to me, because that's what all the the NJ.gov and orgs and all that stuff. So it sounds a little bit better,
Now you're going to get me in trouble. Now I'm going to get a knock at the door by authority figures, and then that's that.
Gosh, I want to ask you this, but I know we have to go. But Paul O'Brien said, "What about parallel time slips?"
Oh yeah. That's well. Let me ask you this: how much time do you guys have? Because
I'm not sure if they shut us off. I don't know what's going to happen. I think the next person's on at 8:30, I believe. So if you have like 5 minutes, maybe you could squeeze it in there.
We're pulling in a million viewers. Paranormal Warehouse. You going to shut us down now? You guys are the Men in Black. No, I'm just kidding. Time slips, right? The multi-dimensional mouthful. Yes, I think there's a strong connection to the paranormal, and I think there's a strong connection to what we perceive as ghosts and apparitions. It could be nothing more than time slips or some sort of overlap. A case that's coming to mind is one that I heard Dave Schrader speak about. He used to be the host of Midnight in the Desert. And he went on to do some TV now. But he speaks about a really interesting case that was shared with him where, and again, I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure I'm getting a lot of these details wrong, but there were some kids who were talking with their grandmother, and the grandmother sitting in her recliner or whatever in the living room. And they asked her grandmother, hey, have you ever had any, ghost experiences? And the grandmother had said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I was sitting here and I saw 3 kids run into the room. They were shadow figures, and they looked at me and then they took off. Now, okay, no problem. So after the grandmother is sharing this story, shortly thereafter, she passes away, and the kids are in, there are 3 grandkids. They're in the living room, and they see an apparition of the grandmother in the chair, and they see this grandmother, and they get freaked out, and they run out of the room. Now, the argument that Dave poses here is, did the grandmother see a moment in time, and the same moment of time that the grandkids saw? Paul Eno looks at these experiences too. He had an interesting case that he writes about where there was a woman, and she was in the car with her sister, and they're driving along on the road, and the sister says, stop the car. That house, I know that house. I'm very familiar with that house. Stop the car. Sister's like, okay, whatever. She stops the car. The woman runs out, runs up to the house, knocks on the door. The wife answers. She screams her head off. The husband comes to the door, and the woman's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. But I know this house. This is just very familiar. I had to stop." And the husband goes, "Yeah, you should. You haunt it." What the heck was that? So she leaves. She contacts Paul Eno. Paul Eno decides to write a letter to the homeowners. He interviews these two groups of people individually, and he finds out that the woman was having dreams of walking in this house, and she kept coming to the window and looking out the window, and then that was it. And then the husband and wife kept seeing in real time this woman walking down their stairs, going to the window, and just staring out the window. So they witnessed the ghost. The woman is just having strange dreams. What is that? Is this a time slip thing? A lot of strangeness. I write about some of this in my book, especially my own personal experiences dealing with time slips on a number of occasions. There's something to it for sure. But again, what causes that?
Right.
What are the factors that make those conditions right where these things take place? I don't know.
Maybe we'll have
Justin, I absolutely love talking to you, love your lectures, love listening to you, love your books, your website. Like, everybody, seriously, go to a normal paranormal dot.
Definitely.
Work.
Yeah,
well, I'm so sorry to hear that. I think you're delusional. So.
Yeah, no way. Oh my gosh. If anybody ever has a chance to go somewhere where Justin's at, please go. It's amazing.
Great lecture.
Get the book, The Spectrum, and read up on it. If anybody has any questions, you can find them. I guess your Normal Paranormal or on Facebook.
Yeah, probably the best way to get in touch with me is through the website. There's a contact form there. Apparently those two have the giggles. They've been infected with some sort of supernatural laughter. Go to site. There's a contact form. Get in touch with me directly there and share with me your experience. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for this
hour.
Thank
you.
Anytime.
Everybody's asking when you'll be on again. So we're going to have you on again.
Great.
I told you.
I just want to have a normal life, please.
No. You can't have that. But yeah, we will set something up soon, Michael, and definitely, everybody else that's interested, go check him out. Justin, love you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you,
Michael and Justin together,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. Sure.
Love to. All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you. I'll see you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So
Thank you.
Next week, off the top of my head, I can't remember who we're going for some reason. I don't know.
Is it Brighton?
Who?
Brighton?
John? Is it John?
I don't know. Is it John Brighton?
I'll have to look. But we'll be on next week, 7:00, and we'll try to do good and be off by 8. Sorry, warehouse people, but anyway. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you guys soon.